In this episode of Education Reimagined, we'll be exploring the role of leadership in shaping not only the educational environment, but the emotional and developmental experience of childhood itself. I am Yara Mazen, and navigating this conversation with me today is Jemima, the head of junior school at Uppingham Cairo. Hi Jemima, how are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Yara. How are you?
I'm great. So Jemima, can you tell me a little bit about your background and career?
Sure. Well, I guess I've always known how important education is because I came from a family that didn't have any money. I was in a single-parent household, but I absolutely loved school. And when I was 10, I won a scholarship to one of the most academic schools in London. And so my life completely changed path, really. And through that, I was then able to gain a place at Oxford University to study. And my life went in a completely different direction.
Oxford University. What did you study?
I studied modern history and Russian.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so my life went in a completely different direction, and education opened doors for me that simply wouldn't have been available to me otherwise. And that's always made me realise how important it was. I didn't think I would work directly in schools, and when I left university, I did a range of jobs. I worked for the BBC for a few years. I worked in publishing for a few years. And then I started volunteering in a local primary school and absolutely loved it. Loved working with the younger children, found so much joy and energy, creativity from them. And then I also started working in adult education. So I started working with prisoners in a prison in South London. And what I found extraordinary about that was some of the young men that I was working with in the education department there had an attainment age of about a 10-year-old, about the same as a 10 or 11-year-old child. Okay. And so that link between academic success and achievement was really strong. And for these young men, of academic failure and then the paths that put them on, and of course there would be other factors at play as well, that was really, really clear. And so that was the point at which I thought it would be a privilege, really, to work in schools and to be able to be part of a positive journey for young people, for children and young people, to help them use their education to open doors.
That's fantastic. So, like, firsthand, you were able to witness how important education was in transforming lives.
Absolutely.
And now you're in leadership role, junior, the head of junior in Uppingham Cairo. How did that come about?
So I then, after I'd done my teacher training, I worked for many years in schools in London. My entire career had been in schools in London, and I'd loved it. I'd absolutely loved it. I started off as a class teacher, then became a deputy head academic, then went into headship, then worked across a group of schools in London, always in junior, always in primary, loving the energy of the younger children and the breadth and the variety of the day. And then personally, my children reached a certain age where I realised I didn't physically need to be present,
to be in London,
quite as present in their lives. And so I thought, goodness me, I could work anywhere in the UK. And then I thought, hang on a minute, I could work anywhere in the world.
How interesting.
Let's expand those horizons.
Yeah, how interesting is that?
And then this job came up.
Yeah.
And I saw the word Uppingham and I saw the word Cairo. And I thought, how can I possibly resist? It just seemed such a wonderful opportunity that I applied for the job and have been here now for 2 years.
And how are you finding it?
I'm absolutely loving it. It's incredibly stimulating, overwhelming at times, of course, incredibly busy, but I'm learning a huge amount. I've been made to feel very welcome here, and enjoying the journey. I enjoy the challenge.
Yeah, I always say, مصر نورت, like Egypt lit up with your presence.
Thank you. Shukran.
So now, this episode is designed for us to explore the role of leadership within the formative years. And most people would think that it revolves around systems and operations, but I feel you'll have more insight into the role of leadership within the formative years, other than that. So,
yes, I think those things are important.
Yeah.
Systems, operations, organisational aspects of the organisation are really important, but fundamentally it's about people. It's about people and it's about relationships. And that leadership role is around working with the other adults in the organisation so that they have what they need to support the children and making sure that everyone feels that they've been set up for successful working. And particularly when we're thinking about working with children, with the youngest children as well, is thinking about what sort of children do we want to develop? What are the really important skills? One of the hardest things about school leadership is we're having to make a million decisions a day.
yeah.
And you can't do everything. So you have to decide, constantly prioritising what are the most important things to do, both in the short term and balancing that with the long term. And so I think it's really important to have a really clear sense of what your vision is for education, what the values are, how we want to behave as adults and how we want our children to develop and grow. And if we're really clear about that, then the decision-making actually follows in a very straightforward way.
Yeah. Because it's basically aligned to a certain message or a certain value system that you're working towards. And in our conversation with Emma, we've learned that Uppingham Cairo prides itself that it's a character-driven school system. So how do you, the first few years of a child's life, what are the characteristics you're looking for?
It's such an interesting question because it will be true for the first few years, but actually it's true all the way through. It's really about citizenship and how do we live in whichever community we're in. Now, for the youngest children, that will be a tiny community. How do they live as citizens within their classrooms and within their very small classes? We have very small class sizes here. How do they get on with each other? How do we make sure that they are able to communicate their needs with each other, to play nicely with other children, to understand other people's emotions and their own emotions, to understand that they need to share, that they need to play nicely alongside each other. And of course, as the children get older, that remains true, that building citizens of whatever that community is. The classrooms might get bigger, or they might be a little bit older, or they then might join our day boarding programme when they're in a club with more children. But how do you make sure that you are a good friend and that you are behaving in a way that is responsible and supportive and kind and gentle? How do you build that character of thinking, what is the right thing to do? And I often say to children, we talk about integrity a lot. So I think one of the ways that we build trust, and this is building trust with children but with adults as well, is doing what you say you're going to do. So if this is what we say we're going to do, if every teacher then does that as well, or if there's the leadership team, we say this is what we're going to do and we stick to it, that builds trust. And it means that from a leadership perspective, if I then say to the adults, this is what we're going to do next, they'll trust that that is what's going to happen and they will come with me on that journey. Likewise with the children, if we say we're going to make this change in school, this is what we're going to do, and that's what we do, that builds trust hugely. And so there's something there as well about, we're back to what I was saying before about you can't do everything in schools. There's always an opportunity cost. If I'm doing this, then I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
So I have to choose the things that are the most important things to do and stick with those, because if I overpromise and underdeliver, that really undermines trust. So building that trust through predictability and doing what you say you're going to do by not overpromising is hugely important.
Can you give me a more concrete example of how you would go by doing something like that?
So yes, an example of that. I can definitely give you an example of that. So I was watching a lesson in the sixes classroom in December, and they were writing letters. They were doing persuasive writing in letters. And I can never, when I'm observing lessons, I can never help myself. I always get involved because it's just more fun and I can't help myself. Yeah. And so I said to the children, you need to really understand the power of language here, that if you're writing a persuasive letter, you've got the power to change the world. And so the teacher then decided that they would all write me letters, and they would all write me letters asking to make some changes to playtimes. Mm-hmm. And some of the things that they asked for were things that wouldn't be easy to do, that would take a little bit of time. And this was some quite young children, some 6-year-olds. But they wrote me such good letters that I wrote back to them saying, thank you for your letters. Yes, we are going to do this. And it's taken a while, and they've said to me, are we going to do it? Are we going to do it? But I've made sure that it has happened, and we've made the changes to playtime, and we've got the specific play equipment that they've asked for, and they've now got that. And what I love about that is that it doesn't just build the trust between the children and the teachers, but for them, it builds the trust in the power of language. I said to them, writing letters can change the world. And again, thinking about what their world is, because as 6-year-olds, that's quite small, it has. They've written letters and they've changed the world.
They were able, quite empowering.
I very much hope so, yes.
That's quite empowering. And it shows how there is a back and forth and like they're heard and seen.
And we say that to children a lot because, children in any setting, in any school will say, oh, you don't listen to us, the teachers don't listen. And we have to say to them, no, we do listen to you. We might not agree with you, but we will always listen to you. And there's an important distinction there.
So do you think is success sometimes defined too narrowly these days?
That's a really big question. Yeah. I can tell you how I would define success up to a point. Yeah. And of course, because as the head of junior school, I often don't know. I know the what next for the child. I know that they might have gone to this senior school or another senior school. I know that they might have gone to university. But beyond that, I don't tend to know what's happened next in their lives. So I can't judge the sort of the huge long-term impact. Were they happy? Were they productive members of society? That's what I would want for them. Were they making the most of all the advantages that they'd been afforded? I can't make that judgment because I don't see them.
Yeah.
The judgment I can make is, are they ready for the next stage of whatever they're doing? And again, we're back to, well, what does readiness look like? Yes, academic excellence is really important. And as I say, from my perspective, but of course, sitting alongside the academic excellence, what underpins that is the character. Yeah. Are they ready socially and emotionally for the next stage? Do they have the resilience to face whatever life throws at them, and whether that's life as an 11-year-old going into the senior school or as a 25-year-old, are they able to think, okay, that was a setback, I'm going to get up, I'm going to go again. Do they have that inner core of knowing what the right thing to do is, of having that integrity? Yeah. Do they have the courage and, as you said before, the emotional safety to take risks? That's not a very snappy answer to definitions of success, and we know that children are vulnerable through social media to quite shallow definitions and quite material definitions of success. Yeah. So that's part of our role, is to help them to see that there is so much more to having a successful life.
I really love your answer. How do you balance between, at a very young age, how do you balance between the academic excellence and all those characteristics that needs to be nurtured within such a young age?
Well, it's the same thing. It's not an either or at all. And I suppose it's about sequencing, actually, what comes first. Yeah. And if we know that children are able to listen, we know that children feel secure enough to go and explore their environment and that have that curiosity and that independence as well. Yeah. We know that if we then, all we need to do is channel that in the right directions to help them really start to love learning. And that's what we're doing with the children in the nursery and the fours, our youngest children, is, yes, they're learning how to be citizens in their small community. Yes, the language and the communication is really important, but also that love of learning. And that academic excellence in those early years does not mean sort of sitting still in a formal lesson environment, it means having the ability to explore their environment, making sure that their environment is full of really stimulating and enriching materials that will have a mathematical foundation or a language foundation or a fine motor foundation, so that the children will think that they're playing, but actually all of the activities they're doing are underpinned by really strong educational principles as well.
That's really wonderful to hear, because, you know, statistically, and that statistic really breaks my heart, you know, children lose curiosity as they develop within schools and as they grow a little older, even not until the senior schools, even in their early years, and they lose that interest and curiosity and that learning through play. And honestly, I believe it's one of the most, I mean, if adults can keep that curiosity, they become geniuses, to be honest. So how can you protect them from that, from losing it, you know?
And that's a really great question, because as you say, you then have the sort of the pressures of the curriculum and knowing that they need to have secure phonics and secure early maths to go on to the next stage. But it is really important. I suppose we do that. A really good way of illustrating that balance, I suppose, is our approach to homework, what we prep, as we call it here.
Yeah.
Which is that children have half an hour of prep every day, which is quite structured, and that will be consolidation of the work that's gone on during the school day. It might be spelling, it might be maths. And that happens every day in school. Then running alongside that, every half term, they have project work. So they'll have a theme, and it will keep the theme deliberately broad because we want a huge variety of responses to that theme. And that's a project that they will take, the child can take in any direction that they like, and they can work on it at home. They might have a bit of time to do it at school. So let's say the theme is just exploration, or we had lights, cameras, action was one of our themes. And they might produce a model, they might produce a work of art, they might produce a PowerPoint presentation. We've had some children composing songs. We've had some children writing stories. We've had all sorts of responses to that. And it's an opportunity for children to lead their own learning that doesn't come at the risk at the expense of the academic rigour as well. So those two things join. And children start doing that from the age of 5 upwards, and then that becomes formalised as they get to the top of the junior school and into the senior school, where then they can use those skills of research, of creativity, of independent work, collaborative work as well, because in the top years in the junior school, they work in small groups on their projects.
That's fantastic.
And they get a formal qualification, the independent project qualification. So then they get recognition for that as well. So they're building those skills. Yeah. But it maintains that love of learning, and we've seen their engagement with it has been fantastic. Yeah. They've absolutely loved doing that.
Can you, like in working with those formative years, have you seen transformations in the children?
It's too early to tell.
Yeah,
My honest answer is that it's too early to tell. You know, we've been here for 2 years.
Yeah.
I have seen huge changes in aspects of children's school lives. So yes, I would say that there are definitely some children who have made extraordinary progress socially, emotionally, academically. But I'm not going to, we're back to the trust thing. Yeah. I'm not going to overclaim because, because it's only been 2 years. Yeah. Transformation is a big word. It's a big word.
I agree. Thank you for your integrity. Because, they say that, children do learn by modeling. Mm-hmm. So, I think that's true leadership, to actually be a model for every single thing that you would like, whether teachers or children, to be like.
And I think the modelling and the role modelling and the responsibility of that for teachers and school leaders is hugely important. And we have this fascinating, the way we talk about it here is that our visible curriculum and our hidden curriculum. So our visible curriculum is, you know, what's happening in maths this week? Oh, well, we're learning fractions in this year group. You know, we might be doing area and perimeter in another year group. What's happening in the history curriculum? Or, well, we're studying, you know, we might be studying the history of Alexandria. That's our visible curriculum. Anyone can have a look at the website or the parent portal, and that's what they see. The hidden curriculum is all of the messages that we communicate to children through our behaviour. So walking into a room and smiling, greeting them at the gate at 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning. It's one of my favourite parts of the week. It's so important to greet them because the message I am giving to the children is, you are welcome here. I am really pleased to see you here. You belong. You are part of our school community. The way we do lunches as well, we have a family lunch, so all of the teachers sit with all of the children. And again, that is communicating to the children, we really enjoy your company. We are all part of this same family, part of this same community. And so all of the messages of that hidden curriculum are hugely important. If you look at some of the displays in classrooms and we think, well, what are those messages sending the children? Do we make sure that we have equal numbers of girls and boys represented on our walls or in the books that we're reading? All of this is hugely important, and the role modelling and the modelling, again, is hugely important. And that if we go into a class and we look like we're having a huge amount of fun, then the children will think, oh, I love this, this is so much fun. And so it becomes a huge, it's massively important.
I can completely tell that you're very maternal when it comes to leadership, and you've mentioned a little bit about the coaching that is done with the teachers. So to keep them with those high spirits and to become role models, can you tell me a little bit more about that, like the well-being of teachers actually?
Yes, of course. There are different approaches to that in school leadership, and I think they're all equally valid. I think the way I approach it is the importance of starting with purpose, with the why. Start with the why. Never asking teachers to do anything without being clear what the impact will be on the children, because that's why we're all in the job. You know, that's why teachers come into the job. They want to make a difference, a positive difference to children's lives. So if we're asking teachers to do something, if we're introducing a new initiative, changing the way that we're doing something, you've always got to start with the why. Why are we doing this? Now, they might disagree with that, and that's fine. We can have a discussion about that. And they do, and that's fine. And we do have those discussions. But in terms of how does that link to well-being, well, we know that teaching is a tough job. We know that it's a really hard job. But we know that for well-being, there are some things that are really important for teaching, and that's feeling that you're having that impact and knowing that everything you do is you're doing it for the right reasons. So I don't ask teachers to complete huge amounts of paperwork because, back to opportunity cost, if they're spending an hour a day doing this paperwork, there are many better things that they could be doing with that hour a day that would genuinely impact on the children's well-being, happiness, learning, academic outcomes. So for teacher wellbeing, it's helping them to feel that they are empowered, that they have autonomy to do what they think is important for their children in their classroom. So knowing their children well. So that's a really important part of teacher wellbeing. Making sure that they've always got someone to talk to. My door is always open to teachers, but equally, everyone has a coach, so they've got a person that they can go to. And that coach will help them, again, with their career development as well. So part of that well-being is also feeling, I have a future here in school. I know that this school values me as a professional and will help me with my professional development. And so coaches will always be asking teachers, well, where do you want to be in 2 years' time? Do you want to develop as a pastoral leader in school? Do you want to develop more academic expertise in school? And if so, well, how might you do that? What training programs can we help you to access, or how can we help facilitate that for you? So feeling valued as professionals, knowing what they're doing, that the work they're doing is work with purpose, and supporting them as best we can that way. We also have an amazing department, our HR department, and our people and culture department look after our teachers, the domestic side of their lives, because
That's
resettling
fantastic.
in a new country with a language that most of us did not speak before we came.
Yeah, I really love that you're paying close attention to this, because this is, like, again, this is the modeling we were talking about previously. And no, they need to come in with that energy, like they need to come in with that safety. So basically what you're doing beautifully is creating that safety, that emotional safety for both teachers and the children.
Well, I hope so. And as you say, again, it is parallel systems, because these are fundamentally things that we believe work, that we all need to talk through if we have challenges. If the children make mistakes, or if the teachers have challenges, let's talk it through. Let's sit and talk it through. Let's not just say, you didn't do that right, this is a punishment.
Yeah. What would be the most challenging thing about this culture, about building this culture of openness, of an emotional safety? What would be the most challenging part of it?
Well, in a way, we're in a very privileged position of being a new school, because it means that in other settings I've worked with, if you're trying to introduce a certain way of working, if there's already an established culture, then you sort of meet with the crossed arms brigade of that's not how we do things here. So in a way, it's sort of that in terms of our teachers, it's setting that out when at the recruitment stage of explaining to teachers, these are the approaches we take. Now, if that's not aligned with your beliefs and your values, then this possibly isn't the right school for you. And likewise, when we're meeting families or showing families around the campus, if they're considering Uppingham Cairo as a school for their children, is really making sure that they understand what our values are, what our priorities are, what our approaches are as well, to make sure that it's right for them. So we're not trying to force anyone to be something that they're not, or be in the wrong place, but helping them to understand.
Then this is what we stand for, and this is what we're trying to instill, and the more the merrier.
And always coming back to those core values. Is this an activity that is going to support our core values, or is it something that's going to undermine our core values? Because teachers are very creative people, and they will often come to me with ideas of, could we do this, could we try that? And as I say, we can't do everything. So how do we make decisions? Is it aligned to our core values? Does it lead to what we're trying to achieve, so that our teachers feel happy and supported, and that they have everything they need to do their jobs really well? And the same for the children. Does it all line up?
So one of Uppingham Cairo's main philosophies is developing independent learners. So how do you begin building that kind of independence?
It's an interesting question, but actually, I think in a way, the more interesting question is, how do you sustain it? Because the independence in the very earliest years, so in our nursery and in the fours, the children are wonderful at it. Because so much of their day, they direct so much of their time. As I say, the learning environment does a lot of the teaching work. So there'll be an activity that looks to them as if they're playing, but it'll actually have a real mathematical direction for their learning. And so they're very good at working out, what do I need for this? They have lots of open-ended play, which really supports that. More of a challenge is, as they get older, we sort of see that independence tail off a bit. As the learning becomes more formal and more structured, how do we make sure that they're continuing to be independent learners? So, if a child sort of puts their hand up, or if you notice that a child's not getting on with their work, and you say, is there a problem? And they say, I don't have a pen. It's making sure that we are not solving the problems for them. So not saying, here's a pen, but and what could you do about that? And really thinking, so at the moment, at this time of year, we're thinking very carefully about our oldest children in the junior school and how they transition into the senior school. And so we're talking to them a lot about independence and organisation. You have to be responsible for all of your learning. So let's look at your timetable. What do you need to pack in your bag the day before? If you know that tomorrow you've got swimming and science and music, what do you need to pack the day before? So that they can manage themselves far better. And that's some of the work that we're doing with parents as well, is let's not solve all of the children's problems for them, all of their challenges. They've got to learn to do that themselves, so that will give them confidence in and of itself. So if I know that I've solved my own problem, that's going to build confidence, but it builds the independence as well. As we've talked about the independent projects in terms of independence in learning as well, but very much helping them to think. We talk a bit about building metacognitive skills. And what that means, there are sort of really several different aspects of that, but it starts with how do you plan your learning. So if you know...
metacognitive skills.
Yes.
Can you explain this?
So metacognition is really, I suppose, a straightforward way of explaining it is thinking about thinking. So learning to learn.
Okay, interesting.
So how do we manage our own learning?
Yeah.
So if we know, for example, that we've got to write a certain style of writing, or know that I've got to write a newspaper article about an event from history, for example, how do I plan what I'm going to do? So thinking questions like, have I come across this sort of thing before? What sort of language structures might I use? What vocabulary might I use? Have I got a pen? Have I got everything I need?
Yeah.
Then the next stage is how do I monitor my own learning? So as they're going through the process thinking, I decided what I was going to put in the first paragraph, the second paragraph, the third paragraph. Have I followed my plan? Am I on track? Am I using the right language structures? Am I writing in the right tense? So am I monitoring my own learning? So it's this twin track thinking of I'm doing the work, but I'm thinking about the work as well.
Yeah, but I'm observing myself doing the work.
Exactly
I think
that.
that's brilliant. And how do you come by, like, do you actually, can you measure kids being able to learn that skill?
Absolutely. We can do that so the third part of that process is review. So it's plan and then monitor and review. So when you finish that piece of work, how do you look back and think, did I include the right grammatical structures that I wanted to? Did I follow everything that I needed to do? And the way we support that is you give children little checklists, essentially, little rubrics, and you say to them, okay, right, I now want you've done all your writing, now you pick up, let's say, a blue pencil. I want you to go back and underline everywhere where you've used, let's say, a fronted adverbial, for example. So in their little checklist, have you included these? And if you haven't, go back and add them in. In a maths example, we might ask people, so we might use what we call honesty sheets. So there'll be answer sheets so when a child has finished their work. So they will mark their own work, and that will highlight to them where they've made a mistake. Now, of course, you have to build that in. You're not going to just tick or cross it in maths. If you haven't got it right, you've got to work out where you went wrong, and then you've got to redo it again. So those skills of self-assessment, of planning how they're going to approach their work and of monitoring it, that all builds that independent work. And you can start doing that with children from a very young age, with those very, very simple structures as well. We do that a lot through, if we're modelling a piece of writing, so demonstrating how we do a piece of writing, we model it so you sort of think aloud as you're writing. If I'm writing up my example, I'll write it up and I'll think, actually, I can think of a much better word for that. I'm going to cross that out and I'm going to write a better word. And now let's go back and check. Have I included everything I needed? So back to the modelling and then slow handing over of the responsibility to the children when they're ready. And again, having such small class sizes means that can be personalised. So we might have some children who are absolutely ready to do that really on in the school year. There are some children who we might have to help a little bit more to do that. Again, we're back to that celebrating mistakes. If a child can't identify or finds it really hard to admit to a mistake, they're going to find that self-assessment work or the review of their work really difficult. So building that sense that you found a mistake, brilliant, because that means you can learn from it.
That's amazing. I think I keep on getting fascinated. The more episodes I go through with Education Reimagined, I think the most thing that really blows my mind is how progressive and holistic the direction of education is in Uppingham Cairo, actually. Because like metacognition is a term in psychology we're starting to learn now. Like it's trending nowadays that you know how to observe your thoughts, and And to have it so integrated from such a young age, I think it's absolutely brilliant, to be honest.
I think that holistic approach is absolutely vital. I don't think you can't separate pastoral care with academic care, with sports activities, it's all part of the same thing. It's all how we're helping children to see themselves, to see their place, whether it's their place as learners and understanding their own strengths and their own challenges, or how they see themselves and how they interact socially, how they understand their own emotions, how they're able to articulate them. It's all part of the same thing. You can't separate it out.
Yeah. Now I'm going to have to move a little bit within the architecture of time, the philosophy of architecture of time, where with the half boarding and how it's, I think it's a little foreign for the Egyptian culture to send off the kids for an extended period of time. So can you talk to me a little bit about how this kind of benefits the kids?
Sure. Well, there are two things I think I want to say about that. One is around the breadth of experience, and that's an absolutely key part of the Uppingham values, is that breadth of curriculum. You know, Edward Thring, who was head teacher in the 19th century, was one of the pioneers of that in England and in English education, that children shouldn't just be taught maths, English, classics, which was what they were taught at the time, but should have the full range of subjects, including, he was one of the first to introduce design technology, for example. Now, how that links to day boarding is when children finish the school day at 3:30, they then go into their first round of clubs, and there are a huge range of clubs. There might be art and design clubs, it might be chess, it might be animal care club, it might be languages, all sorts of things. And then they also have access to a huge number of sporting activities as the evening goes on. So from football, swimming, athletics, squash, paddle, padball, tennis, a huge range. And what that means is that they're not just experiencing the breadth of the academic curriculum, but the breadth of experience. And that helps children find the things that they love, their absolute passions in life. There might be something that they're absolutely brilliant at that they would never have discovered otherwise, but they find it, and then you see, and that builds confidence, especially, you know, if it's a child who might find the learning a little bit trickier. They then find something that they are amazing at. It might be climbing. We have a climbing wall and wall climbing club. Could be anything. It might be drama. But they find the thing that they're really excelling at, and we see that then has onward impacts on the rest of the curriculum, because they feel that they belong here. I have found my thing. I am part of the system.
And we're going to discuss a little bit about the belonging in the houses, but here I think I need to highlight, and this is how you build confidence.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think there is a myth that confidence is something you either have or you don't have, that you're either a confident person or a not confident person.
I love that.
Confidence comes from being able to look back at having overcome a challenge or had a success in some way and thinking, oh gosh, yes, I did that really well. Actually, I didn't think I could do it, but I did it. And I think that's what breeds confidence, is that experience of success. And the more opportunities we can give children to experience that, and I'm not talking about making things easy for them in that way of experiencing success, but giving them a huge range, huge variety.
So they can explore all angles of themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that. When I keep thinking of the architecture of time, honestly, I keep thinking of how it kind of keep the children within a vehicle. So the impact of it can stay for longer. Like the influence that you guys can instill in those children can become more impactful with more time. Does that sound true or stand true?
I hope so. Again, I'm not going to overclaim because we're too early on in the journey. But I think what is certainly true is that children will interact with different groups of children throughout those clubs, because they won't choose the same club as everyone in their class.
And they get to choose different clubs
every year they will choose
They choose
the range of clubs, and so they will interact with children from different year groups as well. So they've got those different ways. We talked about those webs of connection and webs of belonging. That I've got my friends in my class, but I might also have my really good friends in my chess club.
Yeah, I like that, and I can't help but knock a little bit on the idea of houses, and because I think the main essence of the housing or the houses is belonging, and
Absolutely.
I mean in a very integrative way throughout school. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Of course, yes. So we have 4 houses here. They all derive from houses in Uppingham in the UK. And it is, as you say, it is another structure for children to belong. So, of course, they belong to their classes and they belong to their year groups. But we also, as you say, have this vertical integration. So every child from the nursery up to our oldest children and all of our teachers as well are members of a house. And we have lots of activities in the house. So every day we have lunch in the houses. So children will be interacting with children from other year groups. That builds that sort of the skills of nurture and responsibility in the older children as they look after the younger children at lunch. The younger children, of course, love having big brothers and big sisters at the lunch table with them, and sometimes literally because families stay in the same house as well. So it gives them a different way, again, talking about those really strong networks to support children. And it's another way of saying you belong here. You belong in another family structure within the school.
And I think it's brilliant because it hits right directly within citizenship and within community and how you can build that relationship not only with your peers but with older kids, which is in itself an experience for the children, I would believe.
We have some lovely structures for doing that as well, for building those links between the older and the younger children, even sort of outside the houses, which I will return to. But let me just tell you about something that we do a couple of times a year called Big Friend, Little Friend, where we partner up some of the younger classes with some of the older classes. And so we might have children in the third form, for example, who'll go into nursery for the afternoon and they might do art and craft activities. They might read them stories. And as I say, of course, the younger children absolutely love it, but it's actually more valuable for those older children because you're giving them that sense of responsibility. You're also giving them that sense of success again. So if you are a child that might find you might be struggling in that week, you might be having a difficult week with the learning. You might be finding it really tough. But here is something where you know you can do really well. And we as teachers see a different side to those children as well. We see this gorgeous nurturing side that if we didn't buddy them up with the little children, we might not ever see that side.
I think this is brilliant because it also can tap into the, as you said, the nurturing, but also the giving, like to give of their time and give of their I mean, I have a 15-year-old and I see how vital it is for them to cater for things outside of themselves, and I can't help but transition from there to technology. And again, touch on this is a mobile-free school.
Correct. Yes.
And I think that's brilliant because the more the use of mobile phones or social media or constantly, our kids are constantly on their phones, and it is very isolating. So all of what we've discussed in this episode, I think, has to kind of trickle down to this one fact. And I would love for you to reflect upon this and how you can see, because again, I'll go a little deeper as well. Studies have shown that the concentration span and the focus of children has become massively affected by the use of mobile phones. And first question, do you see that within the children that you cater for? You've been in education for years now.
Yes, obviously I work with the younger children as well. I would say that anecdotally I've certainly seen that from some older children that I have worked with. I think that's certainly true. And it's ironic, isn't it, that children have never been more connected with the outside world, but actually the role that plays in undermining their social engagement with the real live world in front of them. Yeah. And I think that mobile phone ban is hugely important. So children check their phones in with us in the morning. And it was when we first opened the school, so nearly 2 years ago.
Yeah.
The first few weeks were fascinating because some of our children, especially in the senior school, didn't know what to do with themselves during morning break. They didn't know how to interact with each other, and they were sort of wandering around in a slightly purposeless, aimless way. They just didn't know what to do. And then slowly saw them start to talk to each other a little bit more, start to engage with each other a little bit more, playing with each other. And they really didn't like it to begin with, but they've got used to it. And we know that children are immensely adaptable. They get used to ways of doing things. And that's back to that consistency and trust. We say you're not going to have your phone, and we really mean it. Yeah. You know, you're not. And we will explain to you, but we will explain to you why. So we will always explain why that is. So yes, it's about attention span, but it's about how they interact with each other as human beings and being present in the moment, not being endlessly distracted. And building those social skills is hugely important. We also know that, you know, studies have illustrated the impact of that dopamine hit of getting a new message or a like or whatever, and the impact of that on self-esteem and children's self-image and on their brains as well. We know that then can have addictive qualities as well. Yeah. So yes, we steer as much as we can away from that. But of course, we can't just put our heads in the sand with technology as well. You can't just pretend it's not there.
Yeah. I was just going to highlight this. You know, the mobile phone ban is just to create space for the individual to, as you said, to take part in the community or to take part in the belonging. But tell me more about how you use technology in general within your the junior years.
It's fascinating, and it's something that we are endlessly grappling with because, of course, technology offers huge opportunities. There are AI platforms that we have explored which offer real opportunities for personalised learning. So, for example, you set a piece of maths prep, and a child might complete 10 questions online, and if they get them correctly, then the AI, the algorithm, will automatically increase the level of challenge. And that's great. That's stretching and challenging children. If they make mistakes, then it might take them back to the previous step as well. And so around personalised learning, adaptive learning, responsive teaching, that becomes irresistible. Yeah. But it's around purpose. It's back to purpose. Are we using these technologies? Are they genuinely doing the things we want them to do? And each time we use a piece of technology, what's the opportunity cost? Are we stopping them from engaging with the world in a different way? Are we increasing the likelihood that they might be so wanting to be on iPads, for example, so much that then taking the iPad away from them causes huge problems, in which case is it better not to have it at all. So I wouldn't say we've solved that, but I would say we're constantly in a dialogue about appropriate uses of technology. I'll give you an example with the fours. So in nursery and the fours, we have learning journeys for the children where we share with parents photographs of lots of the activities that they've been doing. They serve as assessment tools as well. How are the children's language developing? How's their mathematical thinking developing? How's their physical education developing? And these are beautiful objects, physical objects. Our head of digital learning, who's also a teacher in the fours, has been asking me all year, can we move these online? Can we move these online? And I've resisted. And then he came and he said something to me. He said, you do realise that if these were online, parents would be able to contribute to them as well. And parents would be able to be far more active participants in the children's learning. And that was incredibly persuasive and an incredible light bulb moment. So we're trialling it. So we always try, we need to make sure that we evaluate the impact before we roll it out more widely. But we're trialling that this term in the fours. And so far, he's been absolutely right, because what we've now had is parents sending in videos of their children reading at home or a milestone that their child has achieved at home. And so we're now in a far better dialogue with parents around their learning. And so that's a really powerful use of technology. And so it's about making those really careful, intentional choices every time we're thinking about a piece of technology. What does it add? What might it take away? What's the risk?
Yeah, I love that. Well, I think this is a logic that I think everyone should be instilling nowadays when technology and like the AI revolution has come upon us. I think that's a question that everybody needs to answer. Like, what am I benefiting from this versus the drawbacks of it?
Absolutely.
You touched on parents' integration. I can't help but think, but wonder, what is the role of parents within this wonderful learning experience you're creating?
Well, the parents are hugely important. You know, they're the foundation.
Of course.
And we get the parents in as much as we possibly can. We've had some wonderful examples of parents sharing expertise. For example, our hydroponics garden, which was set up by a parent of a child in the nursery for us. It's the reason I'm pausing slightly is, of course, when we have children here until 7 o'clock in the evening, sleep is so important that what I would normally say is, if I had one thing that I would always ask to parents, it's please read with your children at home. And that remains true. That remains true, that reading with the youngest children is the single most important thing in terms of contributing to their education. But we also know that sleep is important. We also know that family time is really, really important. So we're very lucky with our parents. They are hugely supportive of us. And, you know, they're the primary role models in children's lives. So it's for us to get to know them and to understand our families so that we're all working to the same end and that we're all supporting this team around the child. I suppose it's understanding that we're all part of the same team.
Yes, the ecosystem to create that little person that can actually walk the earth or walk the world, whatever it plans to throw at it.
Well, there you go. You put it far better than I have.
Not at all.
So one of the other ways that we've included parents more this year is we've invited parents in for the very youngest children year groups, the nursery and the fours. We've invited parents in for what we call a stay and play. So they come and they spend the morning with their children in the classroom. And so, for one thing, they get to see everything that happens, like the normal morning in a classroom. They get to see all the other children, all the adults as well. But also the children get an opportunity to show off everything to their parents, and they absolutely love it. So they want to act as the tour guides. So they will take their parents round and sort of show them. And it's fascinating to see which aspects of school life the children want to show their parents. Often they want to take and show them the peacocks or the turtles.
I call them coffee mornings, and they're not really.
There are coffee mornings as well.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes, we have the stay and plays, which is wonderful because it means that there's a real transparency for parents about what life in the classroom, what life in school is like for their children. And also, as I say, wonderful for the children who get to be the tour guides for their parents, and they enjoy that hugely. And really lovely for the teachers as well to get to know the parents a little bit better with their children as well. We also have, we have coffee mornings, which have actually sort of evolved into afternoon teas, where we invite all the parents to come in. That started off as a largely social event, also to help parents meet each other as well, because we want them to have those networks, support networks and social networks as well. But to get to know us in a slightly different way as well. They've evolved slightly because we had so many parents saying to us, we'd really appreciate some guidance on, and it was different things, but then there were a lot of parents asking us for some support around, how do I approach phone use or technology use or this aspect of parenting. So we thought, okay, well, why don't we incorporate those things together? So now we've moved to having afternoon teas with a sort of parent workshop as well. So we still have the social elements and the tea and the cake and all
but
of
it's
that.
like a constructive conversation for something that actually us parents are struggling with most of the time. I think that's very, very helpful. I'm sure the conversation is quite rich as well.
Really rich, and the parents learn from each other.
Yeah.
Hugely, because especially if there are parents who also have older children, they can say, well, we tried this with our child, or really interestingly, parents who might have larger families, so 3 or 4 children, say, well, I tried this, it really worked with this child, didn't work at all with that child. So it's not necessarily the same for every child. But yes, so the parents tell us what they would like those themes to be, and then we weave those in as well.
I think that's fantastic, because also it builds the same confidence, like the same thread of values and beliefs, not only within teachers and students or children, but also throughout the families and the parents. And I think that's fantastic, because once you have a community that is weaved on trust and transparency, I think this makes it a very strong community.
And I think it's really important, isn't it? Because we are coming from very different cultural starting points. That, a lot of our teachers have international experience. Some of them have come direct from the UK. I myself have taught in the UK and only in London for my entire career. So, I recognise how much I have to learn about Egyptian culture, and equally Egyptian families really making sure that they understand what we're trying to do and what our core vision and values is, and how do we meet that in the middle to make something really strong, make something that's culturally responsive but still rooted in those core values.
I love that. What is the most interesting thing you found out about the Egyptian culture? And that question is completely mine.
I think there's something very interesting about how much time children spend with their parents here, or in adult company, which for me is very different from the UK. So from a lot of the families that we have here in Uppingham, the children spend a lot of time with their families in the evenings. They all go out for dinner together. And so they're really used to debate around the table and really lively conversation and to just participating in those conversations, which is an absolute joy. It makes our lunchtimes really lively and really exciting. But what that has meant also that we've got to get used to, that we've found that we've had to learn a little, is when children are challenging some of our views, they're not being rude. It's very easy to interpret that where we're not used to that from an English perspective, to interpret that as rudeness. It's not, it's liveliness, it's understanding that we debate with adults.
And it's outspokenness. I think it's important.
It's wonderful because the children have their own opinions and they have their own minds, and they're not being rude, they're just simply expressing those opinions. And so it's been helping our newer teachers to really understand that as well. That some behaviours which we might interpret as this type of behaviour or that type of behaviour in a different setting actually have a completely different meaning here. And a completely different context.
I love that this is truly like the enmeshment of cultures, and honoring that both ways in learning and acceptance and seeing those how can this really work for the children.
And having the humility to do that is really
100%.
important, because if we're saying to children, there's no such thing as the finished article with a human being. We're always learning. We might always be learning new knowledge or new facts, but we're also learning new ways to be a better person, and that never stops. We're never done with that. And if we're saying that to children, then goodness me, we've got to walk that walk as well.
I love that. I love that. Truly, it's been a pleasure talking to you, Jemima. Truly a pleasure.
Thank you.
And I usually like to close with one question. And I kind of know the answer you're going to give me because it is junior year. But what do you wish for your children? How do you imagine them after they graduate? Like when you think of them as grown-ups or little children, when you think of them as grown-ups, how do you envision them?
I want them to be bold and confident. I want them to understand that they have the opportunity to make the world a better place, and they have a responsibility to do that they are citizens of the world. to have the curiosity and the courage and the strength of character to do that, to go out there and make the world a better place.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your time
Thank you,
and your
Yara.
presence.
I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you.